Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Green Factor, a show where we talk about green design and the business of sustainability. I'm your host, Haris, the Green Carpenter, and today we'll be talking about cultural preservation and sustainability. With me today, we have guest Mr. Edric Ong. Hi, Mr. Edric.
Hello, how are you?
So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Um, I
Yeah.
Yeah. So I met Mr. Edric like is it a few months ago when we have the international exhibition. What event was it, Mr. Edric? Can't remember.
We were at the Central Market for the Architecture Festival,
Mm.
and also we were together in the event held at the Architects Center of Tubuhan Architect Malaysia.
There's another event last time, the online one with the
The online one.
Indonesian and all that. Remember
Yeah,
which event was that?
yeah. I think we've been attending too many events,
Too
but that
many
was
events.
more on industrialization
Hmm.
of innovation and
Hmm.
industrialization. And
Yeah, so what I found out was that when we first met, I studied a little bit on what you do, and I got the opportunity as well to see the exhibition last time at PAM, right?
yes,
So
yes.
that's why decided to invite you to the show because, like personally, I believe that culture preservation is part of sustainability, and you have been working in a very long term in terms of preserving culture and in the fashion industry. So that's why I feel like a lot of us can benefit from your experience. So before we go into the topic, can you, for the benefit of the viewers, share a little bit about your journey?
My journey.
Mm.
Well, I guess, Haris, you can say that I'm quite a veteran in this field because I started off as an architect, right? I graduated from architecture from the University of Singapore, and I came back to work on the Kuching International Airport right back in 1976 and 77. So the from there, I then got transferred to our main office of Architect MAA in Kuala Lumpur, at which time I was working on the design for KL Plaza. Then came back to Kuching to serve my term with JKL to qualify for registration. And after that, I became a partner of Architect MAA. Subsequently, I bought over the practice and it became Edric Ong Architect. So from that time, uh, my specialty has always been on tropical architecture and also architecture with a cultural meaning. So one of the major projects was working on the Sarawak Cultural Village. I was the master planner as well as the architect, and I did a number of historical building conservation and renovation for the Sarawak Museum and other state bodies like SCDC at that time. So my background is in architecture, really. But at the same time, I was involved in setting up the Society Atelier Sarawak, which is the Arts and Crafts Society of Sarawak. And we founded it in 1985. So that has been a journey. This is one of the oldest established NGO in Malaysia with the purpose of conserving and promoting our arts and crafts of Sarawak and of Malaysia. So then I suppose the arts and crafts factor of interest took over. And then after 35 years of practice, I then wrapped up my architecture practice and concentrated more on design from my experience as an architect and designing crafts and into textile and into fashion. And textile was always more in my heart because my special interest and expertise is on natural dyes and natural fibers. So my brand Edric Ong Design, therefore, is fairly well known, I guess, for our niche in using natural dyes and natural fibers in our collections. So it has been like that all this while, working as now a designer, but also as an advocate for our indigenous uh, craft communities to move on their traditional crafts into the new arena of where they are relevant to the contemporary lifestyle. So that's my journey.
Mm. So you have also exhibited international exhibition and sales festival and all that. So you have a lot of insight in terms of how other countries or other communities preserve their culture. Can you share a little bit on the issues relating to cultural preservation right now?
Yeah. Okay. Currently, I'm also president of the ASEAN Handicraft Promotion and Development Association, known as APADA, and I sit on the board of the World Crafts Council Asia Pacific region as an advisor and an honorary member of the World Crafts Council International. So on that aspect, then we are working very closely with international bodies like UNESCO on cultural conservation and all the what do you call it sustainable development goals is what everybody wants to quote now in whatever they're doing. How many of the SDGs of UNESCO are you relating to, or are you able to put onto your brand or to your label? But I must say that cultural preservation or conservation is not something that you can just pick off and just lift it off and then add it on. It is a lot of dedicated work that you cannot be like having a quick fix, like your cup of instant coffee that you pour out from your packet, you stir it, and you get it. I think that cultural preservation, conservation, and sustainability needs true dedication of the designer or of the company who wants to engage with the cultural community in furthering whatever they're doing. And it is not always a matter of you all the time as designer or as the company that wants to promote your own sales, but cultural preservation is actually having the interest of the cultural community at heart first. It begins with that. If you're dedicated to that cause and you have formed a kind of relationship with the community that you are working with, then you will see the right results, and it takes time, right? For example, my work with the Iban community, whose textiles are right behind me here, I've been working with them for the past 35 years, right? First of all, engaging them in the revival of the natural dyes because they were going down the road of doing quick touristy textiles using chemical dye which fades and bleaches and all that. And then working with them throughout all these years and then seeing how now that the level of their expertise and the artistry in what they are doing is not only comparable to what their ancestors had done, but they have brought it to a new level, that they are recognized internationally as maybe one of the best wap ikat weavers in the world.
So, wow. So, in terms of just some of the cases that you have described, does the younger generation of this community want to be part or wants to preserve this kind of thing?
Yes, I think so. That I think times have changed, whereby, for example, coming back again to my group of weavers who have brought all these
Mm.
samples. Actually, if we have time, I'll show
Nice,
you.
nice, nice.
But the thing is that being young weavers, like, for example, I was sharing with my other colleague in Atelier, Miss Jacqueline Fong, who runs Tanoti Crafts. She says that the young weavers come in, but they also have an interest in wanting to do innovative new designs. And so we have to allow them to also express themselves and not just copy the old patterns of their ancestors, because they want to be recognized as textile artists themselves, or they want to be recognized as a, a furniture maker, they want to be recognized as a fiber artist doing rattan or doing bamboo. But in the end, it is not just that they want to be part of a factory line. You know what I mean? In order that cultural preservation can continue, it is then to inspire them, encourage them to express themselves in a new manner, but they must know the traditional technique, the technique of how it is made in the best way must still be inculcated and trained into them. So that with that basic training, basic knowledge, they can then move on to do their best in their new designs. So I believe the young people, for example, in our weaving community of Rumagari in Sarawak, they have done very well. For example, with this in yellow, with this in blue, and we have young mothers who are now back in the communities, uh, taking care of their children, but still now going into making puak kumbu, learning from scratch, some of them, but in the
Mm.
fingertips. I always say that it's in the genes that they are able to yet manipulate and tie the yarns to form the patterns.
So it's like they need to know the basic first in terms of how it's been done all this while, understand it, appreciate it, then put their spin on it.
Yes, it's correct, right? I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
you're a carpenter, if you don't know how to hold your hammer and to knock in the nail, you will hit your finger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So
those things.
yeah, in terms of the issues and all that, I'm sure that there's a lot of other things that we need to look into as well. Like for me, one of the things that is worrying is we have, in terms of the timber industry, we have lost a lot of house makers, boat makers, and so many other things. Even like kereta lembu, we used to have a lot of those
Yeah, yeah.
bollock nuts, right? We have
Okay.
a lot of craftsmen, but now very little are there. So a lot of industries have a lot of this problem in terms of the cultural reference and preservation. So in terms of sustainability, I believe that cultural preservation is part of sustainability. So what are your thoughts in terms of this? How can we look into this as part of sustainability?
Okay, which brings me to my next example, right? Sustainability. This is a traditional Iban hat known as topi tunjang. It has cultural meaning in its tunjang or its points, right? And then there is a spiritual significance which will take too long for me to explain to you. But this is a traditional cap, and they stick feathers in it, and the warriors and the chiefs would wear them during ceremonies. But in bringing it further into a more contemporary sense, but still in a way preserving the cultural, we have then added the brim, this brim, to give it a more modern touch. Well, this particular hat actually I'm making for Santa Fe, New Mexico. It is my Pride Month hat. The rainbow colors, but this is going to be at Santa Fe Polka Market. But
Nice.
by preserving, if you like, the cultural meaning, not interfering with that significance of the spiritual significance of the points, but adding in a little bit of change and innovation with the brim makes it a very contemporary and wearable hat, right? So it has become one of our top sailors in America, which then when people ask, oh, what community or where does it come from? You say from Sarawak, from Malaysian Borneo, and what people group? You say it's Iban, and they begin to share about your culture with a different market, a different group of people. So then what we've done is that in order to move forward, that culture is always changing and culture grows, I believe. It is not static. And so we have to move on. And so this is my latest design with them, whereby the hat is now in a fluorescent green. But now we are marrying two cultures. This is Iban, but this is Orang Ulu beadwork. So by combining two elements of culture from two communities, you are then able to promote and share about the cultural meaning to a wider audience, right? So this one actually glows in the dark or in under UV light. So then taking it a bit further, my Iban artist, therefore, creates an even more fancy hat, which has become high fashion in America, that people like Donna Karen, DKNY, has bought these hats for her brand Urban Zen. So it has become something which is special, artistic, and then it has a label that it is made by a living legend of Iban basketry, Senia Anak Jugi. So I believe that then giving and bringing the craft person into the next level of recognition as an artist adds value to whatever they're doing. So it is no longer just a matter of the artist anonymous that we are always looking at in any ethnographic museum. They say, oh, this is from this community, but they don't know who made it. So what we are trying to do and what I'm trying to do is that give face to the maker. It is not only what is made that is important, but it is also now that we know who makes it to recognize them and give them the recognition due to them as the artist maker. So this is one of the strategies of sustaining the cultural heritage material.
Interesting. And also, I'm guessing there's a lot of other process that is you consider, like for example, the use of natural dyes and
Yes.
the material and all that. However, I have this few people in the industry have in terms of this, for example, like you say, they make using synthetic coloring or even material and all that. However, they sell it in a way that it's because they cannot mass produce the natural material and all that, so they have to use that. And this, in a way, gives job to the community. So what are your thoughts in terms of this kind of argument? Are you for it or against it?
I'm not against the use of uh, chemical coloring in the textile weaving, but there must be safe dyes, non-ASO dyes. That means that it must be labeled as non-toxic dyes. What I'm surprised and I'm very disappointed with some of our national institutions is that they're still going around teaching them to use, you know, ESO dies, which I find is ridiculous. I mean, as a national government entity, you should be the ones teaching and telling our weavers to use non-toxic dyes, because the ESO dyes will give you cancer if you inhale the fumes, and you will begin to have skin problems because if you're not using the gloves properly. So if you are using chemical dyes in whatever you're doing, like even if you're using lacquering or varnish and all that, one has to be very careful about the content of whatever is in your product, like the glazes that you use in your ceramics, whether they are lead free or not. So these are the things that we have to be very careful in terms of trying to move on from using the traditional natural material. Yeah.
Hmm. So my next question will be something in terms of application, which is there are a lot of ways in terms for us to use these elements or this what do you call it, ideas from our ancestors and all that. But how should someone, a designer, approach in making sure that it doesn't deviate or as much, or it's not just copy and paste and all that?
Uh-huh. I think how can we approach culture in our design is the question, right?
Yep.
All right. Let me give you an example. This necklace, right? This necklace is fashioned from natural roots by the young Badayu artist Abot Gudang, right? And he paints the traditional Dayak motif over these wood roots that he finds. And then these clay beads are actually your Labu Sayong clay technique, which is from Pahang or Perak, right? And so my ceramic beadwork artist has made these beads during a workshop whereby the Labu Sayong people were showing how they make. So combining this into a necklace, right, which is now very contemporary, but this kind of big necklaces which combines different beads and different wood is also part of the Badayu tradition in the past, right? Probably in the past they would put in more like talismans or components to make it something very magical. But this is now more a fashion necklace, right? So here we are talking about upcycling, if you like, using as found natural material into our design. So here it is taking some of the heritage of accessories from Abdayu culture, making it more contemporary to be worn for high fashion. Okay. The other example that I want to show in terms of design is something which is this is done by one of our living legends of batik painting, but he has also mastered the skill of upcycling your tin cans from Coca-Cola, from 7-Up, from 100 Plus and all that, and then make it into the hornbill. The hornbill carving is very important in the cultural festivals and rituals of our Iban community. So Michael has taken that cultural motif and translated it into a mini sculpture, but made out of recycled tin material, which costs nothing. The tin cans get thrown away, and many people now are collecting them to resell them as salvage metal. But now, in the old days, when you have a gawai burung in the longhouse, you would carve big wooden sculptures of the hornbill and raise it up on the open terrace of your longhouse to call upon the spirit of bravery, which is Singgalang Burong, the chief god of the Iban then, and to ask the bravery spirit to come to the longhouse to empower the young Iban warrior. So now this is miniaturized into something that you can place on your table as reminders of a cultural legacy when you were carving Iban hornbill effigies in wood. But this is just now recycled and has become a new element of art expression. So I am showing you this example so that we have to sometimes think out of the box. It need not be that it is always carved in wood. It can be made in metal, in recycled metal. It can be made maybe with your 3D modeling, if you like to say that. And so approaching culture in our design is making sure that we know what we are doing and what we are trying to convey as a message to the current generation. Right, that's my say.
Amazing, beautiful art pieces, and there's a lot of uh, thing that is being called cultural appropriation, or
Yes,
like
yes.
especially in the US, it's such a big thing. So it means that someone who is not from that culture and using that culture and promoting it as a way to profit or something like that.
Mhm.
So what where do you sit in this, in terms of this?
I think in terms of especially in Sarawak, where we have so many indigenous communities and different cultures, there's always been a kind of understanding and a sense of sharing. So it is not wrong for me as a Peranakan Baba Nyonya to be wearing a shirt made out of the Iban textile. So long as the textile motif is not a motif which is sacred to the community. So those people who are going into printed material for fashion, they have to be very careful about what are the motifs that they are printing and whether they have got the permission to use the design from the weaver. Because it's very easy to just lift up a pattern from a book or from the internet and just print it, and then you end up like you're chopping up a sacred mythical animal which was used only for the cultural festivals, but you've chopped off the heads and the tail and the arms and made it into a piece of a blouse that you are wearing. So cultural misappropriation is what is a concern, that some are more sensitive than others, and so we have to have that kind of respect and understanding on not treading into troubled waters, whereby you know you get into problem if you do certain designs.
Hmm. Yeah, so that is what one of the things I think, like people wanted to know as well, because I think in Malaysia as well sometimes the misappropriation is like the use of the tribal tattoo design and all that. So there's a lot of flag in terms of certain people. just using it however they want without understanding the meaning and all that. So
Yeah.
yeah, aside from that, what about the philosophy? Because like for me, I'm right now I'm looking a lot into the Malay design, which involve a lot of communities and races. But what I see a lot of them, it's not just how it looks, but the philosophy behind it. So how do you approach philosophy, or how do you like make sure that the source that you get is verified?
Okay. Coming back again to Iban textile, Iban Puak Kumbu. We know that traditionally the textile was known as woven dreams because some of the important original patterns are given to the weaving master. She's a lady, a weaving mistress, if you like, for gender equality. But like Bangi and Embol, the current living legend for Kwakumbu weaving, she is still from that generation of weavers who would have dreams. But now, being a Christian, she believes that it's the Holy Spirit that inspires her, and she will get these dreams of patterns that she will then weave into her masterpieces. But her masterpieces are large pieces which are not the wearable ones. These are the ones which have to be hung on the wall as decoration for festivals and so on and so forth. But the danger, as you say, is when somebody takes a photo of her piece of textile because they like it, and then they post it somewhere on the internet, and somebody else somewhere else in the world takes it and then changes the color and photoshops it and then prints it into a new piece of fashion textile. So that kind of cultural misappropriation sometimes is very difficult for us to police and to monitor because sometimes it's outside of our radar. We don't know what's happening out there in the fashion industry or the textile fashion. Uh, but what we now have to consider is how to protect some of our designs. And this is a new upcoming project that I am working with the communities in Rumagari especially, and hopefully with the funding, we'll be able to get this more properly documented and seek some kind of intellectual property right for some of their designs, and also to have some kind of seal of authenticity for those genuine hand-woven wakumbu of Sarawak, as compared to other ikats from other places in Southeast Asia. So if I, for example, I am a researcher and I have been working with them for 30, 40 years, and so one can I quickly identify what is genuine and what is copied from some gedong in Java. You know, there is one particular village in Java that is copying all the hand-woven textiles, not only of Sarawak but also of the whole of Indonesia. It's mass-produced in one particular village in Java. I wouldn't want to name the place in
It's a
case it's
syndicate. It's like a
it's
thing
not
that
it's not a syndicate. It is livelihood, Haris. For them, it is like, yeah, there's a market for this design. So let's copy this design and let's sell it because we can do it faster and cheaper. And so we are, in a way, flooding the market in Bali with this copy of uh, textile from another island, which is coming in as genuine but more expensive. So that's the issue that we are facing. And I think that having some kind of a branding or a seal of authenticity is necessary. Probably you find you have the same case whereby in Songket, Malaysia, Kain Songket, Malaysia, you find that bridal couples find that they can buy similar looking Songket style coming from Pakistan or from India or from Bangladesh. So they they can have the choice of colors, and so they opt for the fake Kain Songket which they will wear for the weddings.
So that's some of the challenge, yeah.
It is.
But yeah, we are seeing a lot of new brands or some old brands that look into this or want to promote cultural and this kind of design. However, I saw a lot of them not doing well, and some of them closed already. But you've been doing it for a very long time, so what works for you? Why do how do you think like people that want to engage in this operate? What are the ethics or what works?
What works for me, Haris, as I stated right from the beginning, it is perseverance, and sometimes it's long suffering too. You have to go through the thick and thin with the community of artisans or artists that you're working with, and then you become like a family with them. So you build the trust between yourself and them, and that they appreciate it. You've seen them send their children. They may be single mothers, and so they have been able to support their children through primary school, secondary school, and college through the income they generate from weaving their textiles. So it's that kind of satisfaction and joy sometimes that you get from working with communities of craft artists and textile weavers. And it's not only just I think that from a commercial point of view, it's not just the dollars and cents at the end, right? One has to look beyond that to qualify what is satisfying for you in what you want to do in your business. If you want quick success, quick turnover, you better invest in some other uh, Bitcoin or whatever TikTok videos that you can do to generate some ready cash, you know. But when you are talking about actually working with cultural communities in preserving the form of craft that they are doing, it is a marathon. It is not like 100-meter dash.
Understand. So our last question for today is about the future. How do you see the future trend in terms of cultural design application would move into?
Future trends, I think I would say that even the young, as I mentioned, the younger members of the craft communities, they have different aspirations and different imagination. So their concept of beauty and what is something that they would like to design and make would be quite different from what their mothers or their grandmothers have been doing, right? So I would say that sometimes it is also quite refreshing to see what they are into. So uh, I think it needs encouragement, as I mentioned earlier. That's why I'm working with again my weaving communities on discovering uh, a wider palette of colors from nature or even with the existing colors that they have, how we can expand the tones to give it more variation. Because I think having been, for example, to the Santa Fe International Folk Art Market all over these years, and one of the challenges for us was that every few years we need to bring to the market something new. Because if I'm a collector of Iban Puak Kumbu, I've got the brown puak. All right. So I've got it already. So the next season you come, if you still bring the same old brown puak, they will say, "Oh, I've already got one like that," right? And so if you introduce to them, like say the indigo puak, or they say they're surprised, they would buy another one. So then you have to move on, but still retain the cultural identity, but changing it within the framework of the authenticity of their traditional culture. So the blue puak was part of the old color range, which was revived. The yellow puak is also a revival color, right? So now we are looking into reviving some other colors. But what was interesting is that they on their own have currently, for this current market, come up with a combination which was quite exciting for me, whereby into one piece they are able to put in four colors: the brown, the blue, the yellow, and the chocolate. So it's on their own initiative that they have now decided to add in. It's, to me, it's a bit like, Chinese ceramics, the polychromes. You started with the blue and white, then you progress, you added in the copper red into the blue and white, and then you have all the polychromes from the Qing dynasty. So, yeah, it can be exciting to explore what are upcoming, like you say, exploring new material, right, of expression. And so it's always changing. And that's the interesting thing. The trends are changing. But on the other hand, sometimes the trends are also coming back and being repeated.
Interesting, interesting. So I think that's all the time we have right now. If you guys want to know more about Mr. Edric, you can look at the IG ong.edric and also Facebook Edric Ong. If they want to buy, they go through you as well, or is there a place they can
Yeah,
buy?
right. They can send me a message on Facebook. Sometimes my current posting on Facebook, on Instagram, is showing some of the new works of the artists, whether they are doing the puak kumbu or some of the fashion accessories. So just drop me a line on the message, and then we'll get back to you.
Awesome, awesome. So if you guys are designers or business that are looking into cultural or elements of history, do share with your friends or family who wants to do this, so that at least they have uh, some some tips for Mr. Edric. So share with your friends and family, and thank you very much, Mr. Edric, for your
Thank you
time.
very
It's
much,
an
Harry.
I love the presentation of real life items, and we hope to have more conversation like this with other artists, with artisan and all that, where we explore more of this issue. So thank you very much again, and for the
Thank you.
viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week. Have a green week ahead. Bye bye, guys.
Bye bye. Thank you, Harry.